morning, thank you for joining me. I hope everybody's well today. Today, I'm reminiscing. I'm taking a trip down memory lane. This video is based on a blog post that I wrote a long time ago. 2014, I think I wrote this one. Back in the day. It's about all the places that I've lived during my life, and I just wanted to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane and share all the different places I've lived with you and talk about my life a little bit. I did make a quite in-depth video about, I think it was called My Life Before YouTube, a few years ago, which is if you want something long to watch with a cup of tea and you haven't seen it, that's one to watch possibly. I'll link it up here. Just in case you're interested in going over and seeing that one. That's sort of a more in-depth look at my life, well, until I was 45, I guess. Did I start YouTube at 45? I think I probably did, around there anyway. Anyway, that's not the subject of today's video. Today I am talking about, and also my roots look horrific on camera. They honestly don't look as bad in real life, but I'm still doing that thing where I'm putting off going to the hairdresser because she's on maternity leave. And I'm going to go to someone different, and I don't know, need to make the appointment, grit my teeth, make the appointment. That's what I need to do. Anyway, let's get into it. I was born in 1968 in Bournemouth, and we lived at the time, or my parents lived at the time, and I went to join them after being born, in this house in a little cul-de-sac in a place called Ferndown, which is about 8 miles from Bournemouth. And we lived in this house until I was 4. I don't have many memories of it. I've seen photos, obviously, so I feel like perhaps the memories that I have of living in that house are more photographic memories from seeing the photos rather than actual physical remembering being in the house. One thing I do remember about being in that house is I had this gonk, which was my favourite toy. Orange thing he was, and he had plastic feet, and I remember being in my bedroom and the door being closed and breaking off his feet. I slid his feet underneath the door. I can remember very clearly, I didn't have carpet in my room at the time. I had lino, and it was white with sort of grey flecks. Don't know if my mother's watching this, but if she is, do you remember that, Mum? And I slid him under the door and pushed him back, and his feet snapped off, and I remember being quite upset about that. That's the only physical memory that I have really of living in that house, but I do remember some of the other people who lived in the close, the cul-de-sac with us, and some friends that we had, and yeah, some vague memories of them, but the actual physical house, that's probably the only real memory I have of that. When I was 4, my brother was born in 1972, and he was born in late July, and in August we moved house to the house that my mum still lives in now. It wasn't very far from the previous house, only a few miles, and in a different village, and we moved into that house. My mum has now lived there for 49 years. As I've mentioned recently, she is now looking to downsize, so I suspect she won't be there for too much longer, but that was the house that I grew up in, and I have lots and obviously lots of memories of that house. It's the house I still go back to stay in, to visit them. They've been there a long time. The house has changed a lot since they've been there as well. They've had little extensions put on in different areas, and the garage has been rebuilt. I mean, it's changed hugely from what it was like. Obviously it's been modernised. It was very sort of almost semi-derelict when we moved into it. It was needed a lot of work doing to it. My parents gradually did that over the years, and extended it and modernised it and all of that stuff, and now it will be, I have very mixed feelings about it being sold. Mum's going to buy a new house first, and then it will be sold after that, but I feel very mixed feelings. As an adult, I haven't had massive attachment to houses. Let me know how you feel about this, because I'd be interested in other people's take on this. I don't feel a massive attachment to houses as an adult. I found it very easy to move on. It's felt like the right time, but when that house is eventually sold, I think I will feel a sense of loss of all the memories of my childhood. I have loved taking William to the house that I grew up in over the years, you know, when he was little, and him sleeping in the bedroom that used to be mine, and all of that sort of thing has been lovely. But many happy memories in that house for sure. The next place I lived, although only on a temporary basis, was the summer after I finished my A-levels. I went to live and work in Spain, and I lived in an apartment. I think it was about the 3rd floor up on the corner of the apartment building nearest to the camera. You can see I've taken this from Google Street View, so I haven't got any actual photos of it. So yeah, I lived there where there was 4 of us living there, and had the best summer, such a good summer. Don't think there was lots of families living in the apartment block. I think we were very noisy. We used to come in very late. We used to bring friends back, and we were all 18, 19, 20, and I feel like we weren't the most desirable of neighbours looking back, although we didn't realise that at the time, obviously. But we had a great summer, and again, many happy memories of living in that apartment. I then went off to university. It was Polytechnic in those days, although now it's a university in South Wales, Pontypridd. And I lived for a brief stint in halls of residence. I don't think I've got a picture of that. If I have got a picture of whereabouts I live, I will try and put that one in, but if I haven't, I was just there for I think about a term and a half before I moved out of there, and a group of 5 of us, all girls, actually 4 of us rented a house in Wood Road in Treforest, and this was that house. It wasn't the most salubrious, and it also wasn't the best. The day that I managed to set the bin on fire and we had the fire brigade round, wasn't very popular with the landlord that day, but we had about 1.5 years of living there, and very happy there. Again, lots of fun memories of parties and all sorts of fun times that we had there over the years of being at university. Too much fun, not enough work, I think could sum up those 2 years for me, but definitely no regrets. When I left Polytechnic, I went to live with a boyfriend who I'd met at Polytechnic in Torquay in South Devon, very close to where I live now. And I was there for about a year. We split up during that year, and I lived in 3 or 4. First lived in a friend's house, and then we rented a flat together, me and the boyfriend, and then I lived in 2 other rented flats by myself with other people, but rented rooms in houses with other people. One was a room in a flat, but so 4 different places over the course of a year while I was in Torquay. In late 1989 I got a job working for P&O Cruises on board cruise ships, and the subsequent 4.5 years I was spent living and working on board 4 different cruise liners. Again, a very happy time in my life, hard work, but lots of fun, loads of memories, loads of photos to look back on. And the accommodation was actually quite nice on the ship. I was lucky enough not to ever have to share a cabin. I had my own cabin with ensuite bathroom. Actually, the first one I didn't have an ensuite bathroom on the Canberra, but the other 3 ships I had my own bathroom, which was lovely. So that was really nice, and obviously got to travel the world as well. What's not to like, you know? So again, 4.5 years of very happy times there. About 2 years into working for P&O Cruises, I was in a position with that nice tax-free salary to buy my own flat, which was nice. And I bought a flat in Boscombe, which is just outside Bournemouth. And I lived in that flat from about, I think it was 1991 that I bought it. And then I moved down to Devon. I stayed there when I was on leave from the ships until 1994 when I left the ships. And then I lived there for about another 2 years, I think, or 1.5 years maybe, before I moved down to Devon to live with Ashley. I still own the flat now. It's rented out. It has been rented out to various tenants over the years. The tenant who's in there now has probably been there for about 15 years, so a good long while. And yeah, I've still got that flat now. Then I moved back down to Devon to live with Ashley. By that point we were engaged, and I moved into Ashley's house in Torquay, which is this one. Ashley had been living there for several years by this point. I think he bought this one in 1988 from memory. And he lived there and rented it. He lived in the loft, actually, had a bedroom in the loft. He sort of semi-converted the loft and rented out all the other rooms to various random people, including my previous boyfriend, who lived in one of the rooms, which was how I met Ashley in the first place. So I moved in there with Ashley. I didn't ever like living in that house very much. It always felt very much a house that other people, it didn't feel like our home together, if that makes sense, because he'd lived there for so long with rented out rooms and with other people, and it wasn't a particularly nice house either. It had a really grotty kitchen and bathroom, and I just didn't love living in that house very much at all. Again, we still own that house now. Ashley's mum lives in it now, and it has been done up a lot since 1988. I probably ought to add, so you don't think she's living there with a grotty kitchen and bathroom, but yes, she now lives in that house. We then moved in 1997, beginning of 1997, to a small village, Cwmtyn Head, where we had very many happy years. We moved to this end terrace house, very close to the pub, conveniently enough. It was a lovely village, Cwmtyn Head, really enjoyed living there, and this was a little cottage, really. It was small downstairs and small upstairs. It did have nominally 3 bedrooms, but technically 2, really. The last one was not big enough to put a bed in. But we really enjoyed living there, and we'd made quite a lot of improvements to that house as well. We put in a new kitchen and a new bathroom while we were there, and again, happy times were had there. We then moved literally across the road. Literally, it was probably 10 yards from one front door to the other. We didn't need a removal van. After about a year, I think 1998 we moved, or was it 99? I don't know, maybe a year. We moved across the road to a thatch cottage. I had always wanted to own a thatch cottage, and that itch was thus scratched by living in, when we moved in it was called Sally's Cottage, it's now called Frog Cottage. We renamed it actually. I used to collect frogs at the time. We had a display of frogs on the steps outside, the sort of garden frogs, and people would give me presents that were frogs and all different things. Had a hanging basket thing. I think it's still there actually, with a frog silhouette on it. We renamed it Frog Cottage. We also owned the house. It came as a part and parcel, the 2 houses. Well, the house on the left that you can see in the picture was originally built as a photographer's studio, and was then later on converted into accommodation. By the time we bought the property, it was accommodation. It was effectively a 2-bedroom flat upstairs with a big room downstairs. For a few years we rented that house out to Ashley's brother and his family, and they lived next door to us, which was quite nice. And we lived obviously in the other house. That they moved out, got in their own place and moved out, but I think when they had 2 children, as it got too small for them. We had William while we lived in that house, and I think we lived there for 7 or 8 years by the time we left. It was William's first year at school, so I think it was 2005 when we eventually moved out. We just kind of outgrew it in the end. It wasn't an ideal house for a family with the layout. I loved living in there, loved having the Aga and the Inglenook fireplace and all of that stuff, but I didn't love that it opened out directly onto the road, and that road did become quite busy over the years. So we just decided that we needed to move on at that point. We then bought a converted barn in another village a little further away. We loved that house. We didn't ever like the village very much. We never felt very settled in the village. We lived there for, I think it was 9 years, but neither of us ever really liked the location. By the time we left, I was really over village living. Back to the house itself though, we loved that house. It was a really nice converted barn. The conversion had been done quite strangely. We bought that house and then we had builders in for 3 months before we moved into it, and we basically ripped out the downstairs and rebuilt it. The kitchen was, as far as we're concerned, it had been put in at the wrong end, so we did major changes to move all the whole kitchen. Well, we put a new kitchen in, but to move all the plumbing and electrics and everything to facilitate the moving in to the other end of the kitchen. It was a lot of building work. So you just spend my life surrounded by a lot of building work. But it was worth it in the end. I'm so glad we were able to do that, the majority of it, before we moved in, because by the time we moved in it was really just how we wanted it. And as I say, we really liked the house. We had a nice big garden for William to run round in. He was 5 when we moved in there, and 14 when we moved out. And so over the period that a kid would want a big garden, he had that, which was lovely. It was just the location we weren't that keen on. And then we moved into this house in 2014. I can't believe we've been here 7 years. It would be 8 years in January. It's just really flown by. I've talked before about buying this house. I'll just give you a very brief story. Ashley is an estate agent, for anybody who doesn't know my husband, and every single house we've bought together has been a house that we've never gone out looking at houses. We've never been to view multiple houses with a view to moving house. They've all just been ones that have sort of happened through Ashley's job. No change with this. Ashley sent me to look at this. He said, we've got this house for sale, I want you to go and look at it. And I came to look at it actually with his business partner Mike, rather than with Ashley, because Ashley had already seen it. And I remember thinking, God, he's absolutely bloody mental. How could we ever afford a house like this? We ended up moving here. That's a very short version of the actual story, which, as I say, I have told before. I can't remember what video I told that in. If I can find it, I will link it up there. But yes, suffice to say that I still drive up the drive of this house and pinch myself that I'm so lucky to live here. I absolutely love living here. It's almost the best of both worlds. We're right at the top of the hill, but we're within 10 minutes walk of town, which is perfect for me. As I said a bit earlier, I was really had enough of village living by the time we moved here, and it was nice to be back in town again. It's only a small town, but it feels a bit closer and more convenient to everything. And I got sick of driving up and down those narrow Devon lanes as well. Really had enough of that. So happy that we don't have to do that anymore to get home and go out. So that is a little trip down memory lane of all the places I've lived. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.